Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are in the world. We're doing something a little different. I've got some friends with me today, and I'm really thrilled to be able to have David, Lauren, George, and Zach. And we're talking about guest sentiment, however you want to call that phrase. I'm sure everyone on the call has a different kind of phraseology for describing why guest sentiment is so important for restaurants. And today we're doing this live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on a bunch of different social channels. We'll record it, so even if you can only spend a few minutes with us, you'll be able to look at it later. But let's do this because we want to use as much time with the talent that we have on the call to get things going. Let's do a few introductions. Hopefully, you know who I am because this is going out through my feed. But if you don't, my name is Carl Osborne. I'm the COO, co-founder of Juicer Pricing, also known for writing this little book, which has a nice little reference in it to guest sentiment. It's called Delivering the Digital Restaurant. And if you hang around today and ask a question or two, we're going to ask the panel what was their favorite question. And whoever gets the favorite question is going to get a free copy of the book. So please think about the questions you'd like to ask our panelists, and we'll be happy to send on a copy to you. But let's do this. Let's start with ladies first. Lauren, lovely to have you here today. Tell us, who are you and why are you here?
That's such a great existential question. I don't even know where to start.
And where are you going?
Let me consult my therapist. Just kidding. No, I am Lauren Fernandez. I'm the CEO and founder of Full Course. We are a restaurant development, education, and investment firm. So we specialize in helping emerging brands grow from anywhere from 1 to 5 units to 20 and beyond through capital that is fair and ethical, our educational services, which are part of our nonprofit, and our development services, which helps brands grow in a number of different ways, from franchising to product development and company stores. So that is what we do. We're happy to be here and talk a little bit about guest sentiment today. So thanks.
I'm really pleased to have you here, and you're doing amazing things over at Full Course. And where can people find out more about Full Course, Lauren?
We are at fullcourse.com and all forms of social media as at Full Course Official.
Great. Everyone, I would encourage you to check it out and hear more about all the great things that Lauren and team are up to. Now, after ladies, I have to go to my national roots and support all things British, I'm afraid. So George, thank you for joining us. Where are you in the world today? Are you over in Blighty, or are you closer to our shores here in the United States?
I'm much closer. I'm in Austin, Texas. Yeehaw! I think I'm getting that right.
By the way, that is the first time I've ever heard yeehaw in a British accent, and it works, George.
Yeehaw, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. So I am CEO and co-founder at Yumpingo. We were launched out of London about 7 years ago now, with a mission to improve the customer experience of restaurants, really. And we work particularly with experience-led brands that are multi-unit operators, anywhere from sort of 5 to 10, up to our largest customers, Texas Roadhouse, with 600 plus locations. So a wide range there. We really focus on 2 core things working with restaurants. The first is helping them develop killer value propositions. That's their menu, their service operation standards, so that they've got a really good product market fit, essentially. And then the second is all around, once you've set that, delivering on that, executing on it every single day, every location. And the reason why that's so important is because people have this expectation about the restaurant when they go in. And if you don't meet that, it causes churn in the customer base, basically. So we give restaurants the tools to effectively manage with their teams, improving the experience and reducing that churn. So it's very great to be invited to be here today, and looking forward to the conversation. So thank you.
Great stuff. Nice to have you here, George. Thank you for that. All right, let's go. What can I do next? I'm thinking best beard, best hair. We'll go with best hair. Zach, over to you, sir.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, thank you. Zack Oates, founder and CEO of Ovation. Also, if you can't tell, I have a part-time job pushing blow dryers. That's pretty much how I spend my whole mornings. Well, Ovation is known for being the world's shortest survey. We are a 2-question survey, and then we use AI and our intelligence to derive all the answers you're trying to get to without asking all the questions. And we love our friends over at Yumpingo. I actually, at home, my blue light blocking glasses are Yumpingo glasses. So anyway, big fan. I tell people, if you're not going to use Ovation, use Yumpingo. If you're not going to use Yumpingo, don't use anyone. No, I'm kidding. And the whole concept is, look, we want to make sure that it's easy for the guests to give you that feedback. So instead of getting 1%, 0.5% of your guests, get 20% of your guests to give you feedback with a really short question, really short survey. You can do that and then make it really easy to respond to that guest, help them feel heard, help them feel known. And so we have an app that in 3 clicks, you can respond to that guest and engage one-to-one in real time. And then let's make it valuable for the location. So locations are driving more 5-star reviews. They're driving revenue. They're driving app downloads from the happy customers and driving repeat visits. So that's the concept is let's get all that feedback while driving revenue. And it starts with a 2-question survey and it ends with magic.
Very good. Great to have you here, Zack, as always. You're also probably one of the most traveled conference goers out there in the restaurant scene. So if you haven't met Zack in person, I'm sure you will be able to soon. Just go to any restaurant conference around the world. He's there, or his doppelganger.
Yeah.
Mr. Cantu, David from BlackBox Intelligence. Nice to have you here as well, sir. Last but certainly not least, tell us about BlackBox and you.
So I have been with BlackBox for a little over a year. So BlackBox has been around since 1995, started around workforce intelligence, capturing, benchmarking data, employee compensation, salaries of managers, benefits, diversity, in addition to turnover. And we also have financial intelligence, which is all the sales and traffic data, in addition to guest sentiment data, to where we're pulling from a little over 170 brands, approximately 60,000 locations of sentiment analysis. And we're connecting the dots between retention of workforce to sentiment, positive sentiment and retention of customers, and how that impacts overall sales. We most recently launched Guest XM, our omni-channel feedback, to where we're capturing all of the unsolicited feedback as well as the solicited feedback, capturing from channels like Yumpingo or from Patronics, to where from CRMs and loyalties as well as reservation systems, to where we run that all through our natural language processor, allowing HR, operations, and marketing to determine the areas of opportunity that they need to focus on to improve the guest experience for the next guest coming in, or improving the experience for the workforce to help drive retention. So
That's awesome.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. This call, I was looking back at my emails. This get together of ours has been a year in the making. I thought it was going to be a relatively quick thing to make happen, but here we are. Finally, we're together. And one of the great things about having you here, David, is that you've very kindly been able to pull together some data for us to kick off our conversation today. And in many ways, it's a state of the nation, if you will, on restaurant sales, traffic, and guest sentiment. So, if I can, what I'll do is I'll just bring this up, and I'll put our little faces to the side here, and we'll ask you perhaps to help us understand where is all of this. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Where are we with all this today? And take us through what you've been able to pull together from the great data that BlackBox pulls out there.
Absolutely. So we want to start with the workforce, because this, clearly there's been, the drastic change that we've seen over the past 3 years with the workforce, and we've tied that workforce. If you would kindly go to the next slide, this is where we're seeing still today most of the restaurants from limited service to full service. We capture limited service. It's all staff. Restaurants are opening today with about one person short still. As you look at from 2021 to 2022, this is up to Q3 of 2022 in red, to where we're still seeing short staff on limited serve. Full serve still a little bit more significant. Not everybody has fully come back to the restaurants. There's a lot of third-party delivery that's created some disruption, and full service back of the house is still short as well. So this has led to some of the sentiment analysis that we've been pulling, to where there's short staff and how it impacted some of the attributes of the sentiment analysis that we capture. If you go to the next slide, another big issue that we've seen is turnover. The good news here, this is actually a good news slide. I mean, we've never seen turnover like this, and it's been over 20 years, at 170% for the hourly worker. I think what was more alarming to us, we understood the workforce coming back in environments to where they didn't feel safe. I would say the consumers were, having certain expectations. There were supply chain issues. The big concern for us was really looking at the management turnover. Usually what's attributed to turnover for a restaurant is a GM or a manager. Usually you start to see that in the hourly workforce as well. So it's still at a record high here in limited service. The good news on full service, we're starting to see that come down, as well as the turnover for the hourly workforce. So full service, much better, on the decline, which we all want to see. But limited service, still short staffed, still a lot of concerns. Carrying on into how this impacts the guest sentiment. So just giving you a little analysis. So we capture with approximately 59,000 locations, 170 brands. We're capturing it from all channels of the unsolicited. So this will be mostly what we're seeing, about 90% come from Google reviews. Then there's the Yelp and others that we're capturing. And with this, we're able to take this and run it through. We're doing about 750,000 sentiment points a month, to where we're capturing it over to all these channels, and we're boiling it down to the areas of opportunity and focus. So if you go to the next slide, this is really what we're seeing on full service side. So ambiance still down. This is quarter over quarter that we're reviewing here. So the way we look at ambiance, it's usually this goes into temperature, it goes into noise, it goes into overall decor, and cleanliness. So where we see it down is still on the cleanliness. What we capture in that analysis, it's dirty tables, dirty restrooms, dirty floors. Now this was much higher, but we're starting to see this come down, which is a good sign. Food from the turnover impacted in the kitchen, as you saw that some of these kitchens are short-staffed. It's impacting the analysis that we see in food: overcooked, undercooked, soggy. Those are the typical analysis that we're pulling out from that, dependent on the brand and dependent on the cuisine. Beverage turned positive, service turned positive because the workforce is coming back. So we're starting to see more on the service side, to where that's helping. But the value is down because we've seen menu prices go up as much as 8% in most cases. We've actually seen as much as 12 to 15% that the customer is being asked to pay on the overall value. Some of the value is being hurt by third-party delivery too. We'll show you that in a little bit, but that's also impacting the overall value. And then the overall, what I would consider, it's the desire to return. On the desire to return is will not go back, or can't wait to go back. We'll capture that in the sentiment. We have about 60,000 combination of words that we capture through that sentiment analysis. So overall, generally not horrible, still improving. Definitely, we expect this coming quarter that we're going to see stronger sentiment on the ambiance, as well as food, but we're not out of the woods yet. If you go to limited service side, this is what's really concerning to us. Still, much of them are, down staff. Turnover is really still very high, both on the management and the hourly team member. Ambiance, dirty restaurants, dirty restrooms. This is what we're typically seeing. Food's down, preparation, with fried foods. Beverage is also down, service is down. It's down across the board. In addition to the, desire to return as well. Overall value down 0.5%. Again, menu price increases. Now, just kind of finishing this all up, if you go directly to the sales and what the sales are doing as of Q3, if you go to the 10th slide, Carl, and on this is what we're seeing: overall net sentiment close to pre-COVID for full service. It's almost back up to the levels that it was on the sentiment, which is positive, but we're still seeing that continued decline in overall sentiment for third-party delivery. That's what's affecting the limited service side. And just going to the next slide, this is more on, just the price per average ticket or price per average person. It's a positive 8.8%, where we saw those menu price increases. Comp sales growth up 5.3%, but the traffic's down negative 3.3%. We expect Q4 to be a little bit more positive because the previous year, 2021, was impacted by COVID and other things, as well as the early part of Q1. So, between fourth quarter and over the next 2-3 months, we still expect to see year over year positive on sales, but we're still tracking that traffic closely because that's what we're seeing to continue to decline. The last slide is just more on third-party delivery. This is the dotted lines are, pre-COVID, what percentage of third-party delivery or off-premise was being done in sales by these restaurants. top lines are what they are today. It's here to stay. We're not seeing a big impact or a downward turn to that. So customers are still going to be faced with, how do you create value in an off-premise model for both food as well as service? So this one, I wanted to tee this up to kind of share just what's happening on the macro trends, because I'm sure there's great analysis from Yumpingo and Ovation that they're seeing as well, coming from this.
David, thank you for that. I mean, great to be able to see the data. Perhaps not so great to see some of the some of the data in the sense of the sentiment out there. But I've been saying this for a while, in the sense that we know consumers want to be able to have a better experience. We know that they are, in some instances, willing to pay that little bit more. But the experience today doesn't seem to necessarily be improving, certainly in an off-premise context. And so we have a former operator in the room here with Lauren. And Lauren, I'm curious if you could, reflect on what David's just shared to us. But similarly, what is great guest satisfaction to you? How did you look at it back when you were running restaurants?
Yeah, I think for us, it was always about that, what we would refer to in the industry as a net promoter score, right? Would they recommend this to a friend? And to me, every dollar that you spend loving on your existing customers turns them into not just a raving fan, but a net promoter plus, plus, plus for your business. So our strategy was always to go above and beyond, to the point where we staffed dining room attendants, even in a limited service concept. I know that sounds kind of nuts, but in a high volume restaurant where we really did a lot of our sales during lunch, that wasn't just a strategy to flip tables and wipe them down quickly. It was to have someone out there constantly checking on their lunch, on their meal, like, is there anything else we could get you? Do you need anything? Hey, don't forget to sign up for our loyalty program. Hey, does your office need catering, right? So there was a lot of engagement even when we had them in the four walls. And I think we successfully connected that through to our loyalty program too. So it was a huge tool for us to not only connect with them when they were in the restaurant, make sure they had a really positive experience, but to get them into our loyalty program where we could really love bomb on them. And if there's one thing I could say about that, is your loyal customers are your biggest marketing tool. I deeply believe that if you treat your customers right and you can turn them into those kinds of fans who will be avid users of your loyalty program, you've just done all the work you need to do. That's where you should be spending your money, especially in this economy where we're fighting for wallet share, right? In an inflationary process, in a recession, if I dare even say it, we're really battling for those dine out dollars, right? And so if you have that opportunity to impact them positively, which is under your control when they're in a restaurant, take it, but then take it to the next level so that you can convert them into your digital loyalty strategy.
Yeah.
Lauren, mind if I pipe in here, Carl?
No, yeah, of course. You pipe in whenever you want, sir.
One thing that we found, and actually there's a really interesting research paper done called the service recovery paradox, where, Lauren, you just mentioned how your happy guests are, your biggest opportunity to grow. But if you look at it percentage wise, your unhappy guests have your biggest opportunity of becoming loyal guests. And here's why. Right? As you know. So one of the things that this research paper about the service recovery paradox proved is that a guest who never has a service failure, compared to a guest who has a service failure and then a proper service recovery, that guest who has a service failure is more likely to become loyal than that guest who never had the service failure in the first place. The question is, what does it mean to handle that guest who has a bad experience?
Yeah.
And the two things that we found in our research and our platform that are really critical is, one, it needs to be prompt. Getting back to someone a month later, being like, hey, you came in and saw your hot dog was a little cold in over Thanksgiving, and here we are end of January. It's like they don't remember you, right? The guest doesn't remember the fact that their hot dog was cold. They just remember that they were upset and they don't want to go back to that restaurant necessarily. The other thing, so prompt is important. Something that's interesting is a lot of times people say you need to respond within 5 minutes, within 10 minutes. We found that if you respond within 48 hours, there's not a significant drop off in effectiveness. But the other thing it needs to be is personable. you need to be able to communicate with that guest, use a name of someone talking to them, use their name, address their concerns specifically, talk to them like, I don't know, a human, right?
Yeah.
Or like, if you can't talk like a human, just use Chat GPT and that'll help you out. That's like better content than most people create. And if you do something that's prompt and personal, and then the trick is an incentive. The incentive doesn't even need to be big to get them to come back. But in our data, we found that you are twice as likely to bring a guest back, even if you offer something like a free churro. That's might be like for El Pollo Loco, right? It might be like $1, but that'll get a free drink. Even a little thing just to show that you care about them and that they feel like they're getting some sort of compensation is so critical. And so I 100% agree. I think it's so, we need to be able to find our happy guests and convert them into, taking action to grow the brand. And also, we need to address those unhappy guests. Don't let those unhappy experiences sit there. Respond to them, address them. Do it promptly, do it personally, and have some sort of a trackable link so you know who that guest is and when they come back, and make sure that you're eliminating those the 1% of consistent complainers.
Talking of this importance of promptness, Zack, I was talking to the restaurant at the National Restaurant Show last year, and I was trying to do my very best of advocating for all the knowledge that you guys have been teaching me over the years. And I brought up Richard Branson's company, Virgin Trains. I don't know whether you ever saw this, but it was a representation of a guy. Unfortunately, he was in one of the restrooms on the train, and there wasn't any toilet paper left. And he tweeted out about his disappointment that there wasn't any toilet paper. And guess what? Because Virgin Trains and their social media team were so on it in that very moment, someone came and was able to get him the toilet paper. And that became this huge viral tweet that Virgin Trains got a huge amount of benefit from because they were able to respond in the moment. So a bit of a fun example. But the reason I share that with you guys is that the importance of this now is that it's not about a positive or negative guest experience just being told to our immediate network of friends. Because so much of this stuff happens across the internet, a good experience or a bad experience can go out there and become something pretty bad if you don't manage it. George, what's your take on this? Tell us your perspective and how promptness is a factor. And I'm curious for your view on, what is great guest satisfaction when you can overlay the data lens that Yumpingo can bring to the table?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the evidence that I've seen both from our own platform and customers and from various industry reports is fundamentally the more happy guests and customers you can have because you meet their experience, the better the business is run and the more customers you get. And I think recovering and promptness is very, very important for those times when things go wrong. Hopefully it's quite a small percentage of times. And hopefully that when things do go wrong, you maximize the opportunity for them to recover. Where we focus and the companies we work with really focus their time though is a lot of them use NPS, I think is the benchmark, which we've seen across the industry. Could be CSAT, could be likelihood to return. I think the most important thing actually is consistency of having that same metric. So using the same metric over an extended period of time and getting the right amount of data so that it's meaningful. Because if you only have a few data points over the course of many, many months, well, you've got a very low fidelity view of what's really going on in your restaurants. But that's the benchmark, that's fine. But if it dips, why? Why is it dipping? What's going wrong? Where is it going wrong? Which menu items is it? What patterns of shifts can I spot? And I think that's been our approach of working with brands, is giving them very granular but yet easy to understand view of what's really going on in their restaurants and what's important to fix. Because if you're an operator and you've got, say, 2 or 3 restaurants in your portfolio, you can be there on shift, looking around, you can touch every table, you get all that data. But as soon as restaurant brands start to scale, as the operator, you lose control over what's happening in all of your locations all the time. So our kind of philosophy is to say, almost put that operator on every table and put their kind of brain into the software so it can help teams to prioritize and fix what's really important. The final thing I'd say on the value point, which David, that was super interesting, and particularly the differences between the different service styles and parts of the market. We've seen, because we track value perception on every single dish that guests are served. So we've got this very granular view of them. And so what's been interesting to observe is that value isn't necessarily correlated with price increases. It seems to also matter a lot about, so customers are expecting prices to go up. There's inflation going on with that, but that made them more discerning. So they're now paying more. They're kind of, it's like their expectation of the quality element of value, because value is a factor of quality and price. Mm-hmm. So the quality element is more important than ever. And so you've got to be making sure that you meet that for as many guests as possible. Because if you get it wrong, it's like a special kind of pain when you have a bad restaurant experience, because you can't, it's not a pair of sneakers you've bought online and you can send it back and get a refund. It's your time on this earth, and it's disappeared for a moment. So that's kind of interesting trend we've seen. Value is not just all about price, is what I'm saying. It's got to involve the quality element as well. And
yeah, certainly from what I've been seeing, at least from the juicer standpoint, where we are dynamically pricing restaurants today, is actually if you price at the right point at the right time of day, you actually don't see a huge level of volume impact. And so for us, I think it's more about this question of what is value and how can you drive value. Now, David, I want to come to you with this piece on what Lauren actually mentioned at the top of this question, which was NPS. And I had a CEO the other day of a big restaurant group ask me, he says, well, Carl, my board are telling me that my NPS score is this, but why are my sales this? And I can't find the correlation. Has NPS had its day? Does it still have a role to play? And how can companies like Ovation and Yumpingo and what they're doing really take things to another level?
So I would say, so I ran restaurants for 17 years, early stage with Outback Steakhouse, early stage number 3 with P.F. Chang's China Bistro. So I'm a restaurateur through and through, have been in the tech space for 20 years, building technology for the restaurant space. I would say that when I really look at the data of sentiment, Net Promoter Score is not actionable. It's one thing. It's not really the entire journey of the customer. The entire journey of the customer is the ambiance, the service, the food, the beverage, the overall value that they got from that, and their desire to return. And then there's an overall net sentiment with that categorization. But each nuance of that sentiment, is broken down into fine granular detail that needs to be actionable. I run restaurants a lot of times. So, the way I think about technology is if it doesn't help a manager action something, then it's just data. It's just more noise. And, I would say from the time that I last ran restaurants was 2006. The environment has changed with the technology, because back then there was probably about 5 solutions in a restaurant. You probably had your point of sale, your BI, maybe your labor, maybe your inventory, and loyalty. Today, some brands have as much as 35 different 40. We have found a brand that had 42 different point solutions in their restaurant. So think about all the data that they're capturing. If it's not actionable, it's hard for them to make a difference. And running restaurants becomes like Groundhog Day. I'm here to serve hot food hot, cold food cold. That's the priority. If I can't determine, from whatever sentiment, doubt, analysis that I'm capturing, it's just, more data points, from that. So I think from my perspective, one sentiment just solely is a vanity metric. That's the way I really look at it. You can't action it.
Yeah, it's like in the airport or whatever, when you see those happy or not things, right? At the bathrooms in the airport, and maybe you want to, you touch it with your elbow or something like that. And maybe it's easy for a bathroom when you've got maybe 12 things that you're looking at. Like, okay, if I switch to from 2-ply to 1-ply toilet paper, what's going to happen to satisfaction, right? And it's a great reactive measurement. But as a proactive measurement, as knowing what do we need to do to actually fix the issue, you can't actually do anything because you don't know, to George's point before, is like, you don't know the why. Why is this happening? It's not about the satisfaction, it's about why. And one thing I will say, as a company that we used to do NPS, we have switched away from NPS. And here's one of the major reasons why. User interface. We do almost, we're 99.9% of our surveys are completed on a mobile phone. NPS is 11 options, 0 to 10. And it is extremely difficult to have a user interface with 11 options on a mobile phone and get accurate representation. Then we switched to 1 to 5. We switched to stars. We've tried a whole bunch of different things, and we found that emojis, actual like smiley face emojis, have been the most accurate depiction with the lowest false positives and false negatives, and to give the emotion of what's actually happening. Because at the end of the day, you're only as good as your last experience at that restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. You could be super loyal to a restaurant for years, and you go in and have a horrible experience, and mm-hmm. you're at risk of losing that customer forever, mm-hmm. especially because there is no industry on earth that has a leakier bucket than a restaurant, where so many people are walking in and walking out that door, and you know no more about them when they walk out as when they walk in. And Dean LeBay just made a comment on the cost of acquiring versus the cost of retention. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it, it costs you 5 times more to get someone to come in the first time than it does to get someone to come in the second time. And yet 70% of first-time customers don't come back. And so we're spending so much money to bring people in, and then we're just hoping it's a good experience and they come back. And that's why I feel like it's critical to have something that is not only an easy way to measure, but it's an accurate way to measure. And it's a way that is going to drive, to your point, David, it's going to drive action. Because if you don't know the why, if you don't know what do I need to fix where, then what do you have? You just have useless data.
One of the things I love about this conversation is just the differences of how capability in this area has evolved over just the last 10 years, quite honestly. When I was running a network of C-stores, NPS was really useful at a very high level, and I'd see it in a marketing deck somewhere. But today, the things that you guys are driving, it's an operator's tool. And what I mean by that is that you're able to determine whether you've got a quality issue on a specific product across your entire network, or whether you've got an execution issue, maybe a training problem in a particular location. George, could you tell us a little bit about your thoughts around what this operational impact can bring? And then I'd love to then go to Lauren and get your view, Lauren, as to how operators need to perhaps embrace this line of thinking more effectively. George, over to you.
Yeah, sure. It's a really interesting area because, as Zach was saying, that so many things can go wrong in a restaurant. It's so complex, different service styles, different types of restaurant, different brands. And then the kind of menu and proposition is so different and very complicated as well. So separating out what is a menu development or core concept issue versus a specific execution issue at this location is absolutely critical. What we often see when we first start working with customers is they've got hunches about there being problems with their menu. And actually, when you get into it and you give them this new lens they didn't see before, it wasn't a menu issue at all. It's actually this group of locations specifically being run by these managers that have got a problem with them. So the value to that is enormous because, firstly, it means you can identify what's really a menu development issue, and you can fix the portion size, you can fix the pricing, you can fix the ingredients, and you can kind of roll that change out. But secondly, so much of the potential for best experience is happening at the local level. Mm-hmm. It's in the power of managers, chefs, servers. They are the ones that can make the change. And so what the technology is now able to do is collect all this data, sift through it intelligently, and just give these insights to those operatives in that location. And the impact of that is that ultimately way fewer guests have a bad experience. I mean, we are typically seeing between 25 and up to 40% reduction in customer churn because of execution issues going down. So it's tremendous what can be done if the right tools are given to the right people at the right time. But that's a cultural shift as well, I'd say, because, you know, back in the day, it was NPS sitting in head office. We'll give you a report once a month, then off you go. Whereas now it's a change of work and saying, hold on, I can actually give this data, I can democratize it through the organization. That's a very different way of operating as a business. That's been interesting.
You're getting applause from the audience here.
Yes. So I just want to say, I've been sort of holding my tongue on this. So at the end of the day, whether it's NPS or some other tool, you need to be measuring guest sentiment, and you need to be managing your brand reputation, including negative comments online, period, full stop. The real clincher here is, have you taken the extra step to incentivize and to fully, and I mean fully, empower your management at a store level to treat those customers like they're their family, right? Are you really giving them all the tools that they need to fix it? I'm gonna give you like a perfect example of this. So yes, we didn't have an easy way of pushing all of this data down to our store levels. And this was back, 4 years ago. But we did capture the weighted average of all their online comments, right? Were they trending positive? Were they trending negative? What were the direct complaints we got from customers during that time period? So one of the 4 ways our general managers could get their full bonus, which was points of profit sharing, by the way, on a quarterly basis, was customer satisfaction and the metrics behind that. That's how important it was to us. The second metric that we used to reinforce that was the loyalty program. Were they driving, acquisition of customers into our loyalty program up? Because to us, that's a way to retain that customer, the way that we chose as a company to continually interact with them. So in our situation, there were plenty of ways to immediately escalate. And, every once in a while, you're just going to get a Karen who wants to speak to the owner, right? One of my favorite stories was, I was at a register one day and I got someone who escalated and they were like, I want the manager on duty. And I'm like, you're looking at her. And then she was like, well, that's not good enough. I want the owner. And I'm like, still looking at her. And the whole line behind her started laughing. And, we took good care of her, and I'm not making fun of that person, but rather those moments still exist. And even if it's the 1% squeaky wheel, you have to empower a manager to handle that situation authoritatively. We developed these little cards. We called them owner escalation cards. And it was a business card printed for specifically the purpose of when a manager could not fix it on their own, they had our permission to hand out this card. And the email address went to owner at, and it was me, but it channeled all of those really kind of high conflict, really unresolvable issues directly to someone on our team who had authority to deal with them at the highest level. And then we could try our best to rectify the situation. But that was yet another tool I gave my managers. I said to them, look, do not feel ashamed to escalate to an owner. We have a process for that. Here you go. Use it. If you can't fix it, stop wasting the time on it and say, you know what, I would really love for you to speak to our owner. Here's her information. And to the whole point I want to make here is, data is wonderful, but you have to share it and you have to incentivize and empower your teams who are on the ground, full stop.
Wonderful. Hey, I'd like to spend the next kind of few minutes, if I can, helping the average operator that's listening, that tunes into this after the live broadcast, explore this theme, because I estimate probably 2 to 4% of sales today of a restaurant's overall sales is going towards technology in some way. And there's loads of different technology solutions out there that are helping restaurants. And in this year in particular, when probably the economic pressures are starting to line up and the CFOs and CTOs are starting to ask, well, where do we really need this technology? What's really helping right now? I'm curious for you guys to share, why is this so important right now, this year in particular? And why is that, if you haven't invested in this, why should it be something you invest in, or why should you keep investing in it? David, obviously, your company is one that shares data. That's what you do, and you share the insights that come from it. So you've got probably a lot of experience on this. Let's start with you.
Well, I mean, really, our focus is to elevate the restaurant industry. I mean, there are other industries that are taking a share of wallet from the restaurant industry. Groceries are turning into restaurants. They see higher profitability from those things. Convenience stores have turned into restaurants. People are really looking at experience or convenience now with the notion of off-premise. I think that I want to just touch on what Lauren was saying, because the model of the industry is broken in the way that we manage it. And I believe it's broken because we incentivize the wrong behaviors in the industry. And I'm not speaking for all, because some do an incredible job. We have some customers that are focusing on the right metrics, but generally in most brands, managers are compensated variable comp. We take all the benefits, understanding food cost and labor cost.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens when you're incentivizing that behavior. As far as labor costs, when we see it in wage inflation for those that were, on average 35 hours, or if there was a law enacted that 35 is no good because of insurance, they adjust hours and they impact the employee because they get bonused off of labor percentage. Food cost is the same way. Food cost is counter to the customer experience. So those types of metrics, and not centering them around, things like employee happiness or engagement or retention or customer satisfaction, retention, the sentiment analysis. When brands start to focus on those things, sales and traffic continue to go up, retention goes up, both on the employee and on the customer. It's that simple. And some brands have perfected this. It's the brands that are playing the short game, or the finite game, if you'd like to say. It's the ones that are playing the infinite game, that are really thinking about the future and doing all the right things. So I wholeheartedly agree that, that they need to be incentivized. They need to have the right actions. Until that changes, we're going to continue to have experience challenges, both with the hourly workforce and, the management and the customer in general. Now, from a data perspective, share with me again, Carla. I want to make sure I'm answering your question correctly with regards to.
I think there's lots of folks out there that are obviously looking at their tech stack, looking at their costs, and they're asking, where should I put my money this year? And some will be looking at current guest sentiment analysis providers that they're working with and thinking, do I still need them? Others might be considering investing in them. How should they approach their thinking to make the right decision?
There's for me, my belief is there's feedback from multiple streams, from both the direct and indirect. As long as they're capturing those data points, and they go through one natural language processing engine to, share where the issue is, that operations can tackle it, HR can tackle it, marketing can tackle it. As long as they're taking one lens, that's where they should be focusing their time. I was working with a brand recently, and marketing data that's their data. And, operations held another data point. They were two siloed data points that they were considering. And that's what tends to happen, because marketing determines what they're going to push and operations determines what they're going to fix. And everything's about just fixing, more so than where can we give the praise, because we as operators are known to be firefighters, and all we're doing is looking for the fire and not looking for the positivity that we should be, providing feedback, positive feedback, recognition back to the operations. I love what, Yumpingo does, because they draw it down to the detail of a dish that you can speak to a cook or a chef and let them know just less salt, make sure that the pasta dish is strained out so it's not watery and bland, which, so it's all small, little actionable. So when I think about investments in technology, if it doesn't have high adoption and if it doesn't have a use case, you shouldn't be using it. And if you look at your 15 to 40, which most brands have, different tech stacks, find out in the field what the corporate or the headquarters wants, just to capture the data so they have a metric to manage. They'll find that there's a lot of technology riddled out there. that has lack of adoption because the management turnover is so high, the manager cannot be onboarded, learn the operations and the menu and 30 different technology solutions. So consolidation is key, getting down to those things that are easy that a new manager, keep in mind, if it's 70% turnover on limited serve, how many technologies do you expect them to really learn and use? You get a good use case. I had spoke with a CEO. This was probably about 2 years. It was right pre-pandemic. Food cost, labor cost, lease is the highest usual, and their technology surpassed their leases. So today, technology is surpassing lease.
Wow, that's
in
great.
most cases, because somebody wanted yet another tool. I face it in my own business. Of you look at the sea of tools that we have, and you're like, how is it that we have all these tools? You have to draw down on what's going to be adopted, what's going to be used, and if the operators won't use it, that should be evaluated.
Totally.
It's either
Let's come to you with this one, actually, because I'm curious about 2023 with the economic uncertainty that exists out there for restaurant owners. We've just seen some of the data set. How do you deal with that question about the importance of this now in particular?
Was that question for me?
For Zack, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said. Okay.
Yeah.
It's my accent. It's my accent. Blame the accent.
Cut out for a second. Sorry. Good.
Well, the way that I look at it is that everything that we do in the restaurant, right? I worked in restaurants. My dad owned a restaurant. Seeing what this was like growing up, everything we do, from the ingredients that we pick to the training, to the ambiance, to the music, to the chairs, the packaging, it all boils down to the guest experience. And yet we do all of this for the guest experience. And then to Lauren's point of like, we have to be measuring it, because if we're not measuring it, it's like getting down. Imagine watching American football, and you get to the 5-yard line, and then you just kind of like cut to like the next quarter. It's like, well, what happened? Well, the score seems to have changed, so maybe they scored, right? It's like, if you're not measuring it, you're missing the last part. And for the guest, switching costs have never been lower. It has never been more expensive to bring a new guest back. We cannot afford, in this industry, in this environment, at this point, to lose a single customer, because they don't need to drive a mile down the road. They need to make one more click on their smartphone. And this is war. And this is war for the hearts, minds, and stomachs of these guests. And this is a hand-to-hand combat battle. And so we need to equip our frontline workers with the tools, to David's point, that are easy to use, that require very little training, that are simple to maintain, that have direct correlation to bringing new guests in, bringing current guests back, or efficiency. And if we can't drive those correlations, we got to drop them. Because at the end of the day, it's like I said, it's about the guest experience. And what are we doing to create a better guest experience? And I love George's point about value, where value isn't just taking price. Value is around creating that experience, and little things go a long way. And when you equip your frontline workers to really win at hand-to-hand combat, that's how you win in aggregate, which is powerful.
Absolutely. George, what's your take if someone was to say to you today, okay, I'm thinking about Yumpingo, but how do I correlate this to the bottom line improvement I'm going to see in my restaurants?
Yeah, I mean, I would firstly say this sector has been digitizing at a tremendous pace recently, the hospitality industry. Like over the last 5-10 years, it's just exploded. And so it's very difficult to navigate, both as an operator, but sometimes for us to understand the whole ecosystem of what you can do and what talks to each other and what doesn't. So I think it's important to kind of just recognize that. Right now, there's fewer customers out there ultimately, and it's more competitive. So how can technology give you the edge? When I look at other sectors in the space we're talking around today, around guest satisfaction and feedback and customer experience, there's a lot of maturity to learn from in what other sectors are doing and how they approach managing the customer journey. And they really put the customer and the customer data at the heart of their business. And that's a bit different to hospitality right now, where it's financial data that kind of sits there in the middle. It's quite interesting to kind of observe what I think is happening in this industry, and you see it in others, of how guest data and profiling and understanding how to improve everything for every single guest is really, it's really a growth area. And I think the future. One particular use case, though, why us right now? I will call out inflation and pricing and portion sizing, because what I observed middle of last year was prices went up very quickly. Operators had no time to respond, no time to renegotiate, and had to just make off-the-cuff decisions about where to put their prices up or where to change, kind of where to reduce portions or whatever, or swap out ingredients. But I think now there's an opportunity to be very strategic about that this year. So I would say with Yumpingo, you can identify every menu item, look at the taste, the portion size, the value of it. So you can then A/B test what's the best price and quality factor for every single menu item and roll out really quickly with confidence. So that would allow you to reclaim a lot more margin, both reducing the bottom line, but also make it more likely that that particular dish is going to be enjoyed by customers than it was before.
Great. Thank you for that, George. Now, we've got about 5 minutes left, and we've had some questions come in. So I want to try and get into answering some of the questions that our audience have asked us. Let's bring up Fabio's question here, first of all. He says, really interesting information. Congrats on getting this done. In terms of off-premise, or off-premise channel in particular, where it's hard to control the customer experience, are there any data points regarding sentiment that restaurants could control? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I'll just mention this because this is something we actually earlier today happened to be doing some research on this. We found that there are 6 times more complaints about order accuracy off-prem than on-prem. We found that there's 3 times more complaints about the ordering process, 2 times more complaints about food quality. An online review, the average restaurant online review is 4.3 stars. If you look at an average online restaurant review that mentions delivery, it's 2.8 stars. So maybe all of this is just to back up what we all feel, which is it is a worse experience off-prem than on-prem. As I've been saying, once you remove the roof of those 4 walls, it gets real stormy out there. And so the thing that I would really focus on is order accuracy. That is the biggest mole popping up its head right here that you can whack, because 6 times more complaints about order accuracy off-prem than on-prem. It is essential to have a system where you are double checking that order, because while 30% of orders have an issue when you dine in, you forget my ketchup, easy to refire. Or not, I guess not refiring ketchup, but you mess up my burger, easy to refire. You forget my ketchup, easy to get it. You give me onion rings, not fries, not a problem. You don't bring me, an order of fish sticks, I can go get it. You do that after a 20-minute drive home with 3 angry kids who are hungry, an upset husband who's hangry. Like, that is a different story. You're dealing with a dragon there. So I would say the number one thing is expo your to-go orders and ensure order accuracy. There is nothing that will get you a faster negative review than inaccurate order and missing items for to-go.
And it will hit you on your chargebacks as well. If you haven't got a good control process in your chargebacks, the third parties will hit you in the pocket there. Okay, let's go to Chris Swiden. He's asked, how many feedback questions tends to be the best quantity to get quality feedback without abandonment by the guest? Great question. George, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't see it in terms of numbers of questions, but I see it in terms of time. So we like to keep it under 1 minute is really important. And the way we approach it is we ask some questions, but it's more users being able to input, did I like this dish on these areas, or what was my problem? It was a speed issue and it took too long to take my order. So we basically try and work hard so you get the guests to identify any problems as quickly as possible, without having to ask them 100 questions to find which was the one that was actually the problem.
Great. Thank you for that, George. I know we've got about a minute and a half left before Zack, because he's so popular, has to go to another live webinar. So follow his feed. I'm sure he'll be somewhere else. But before we do that, let's ask David and Lauren. This is something, David, you were touching on earlier about just the importance of staff sentiment. What we've got here from Katie is, in terms of incentivizing management incorrectly, curious how the panel views the ideal ways restaurants should be incentivizing their staff around guest sentiment analysis. Are there any metrics?
I want to share this. Oh, I'm sorry. Please, Lauren.
No, you first. It's okay.
It's you know, if you really study Google, and if you really study Google My Business, and you realize that today people are naturally conditioned to open up a map, type in Mexican, type in hamburger, type in something. Google has figured out the whole SEO strategy, and you need to understand what that is, because it's not just about star rating. And I do believe that because mostly 65% are going to Google specifically, it's probably higher by now. That is a window into the value that your staff has on the previous customers. And if you're not responding to them, if you're not interacting with the positive, both the negative, if you don't understand what is the relevance of why is it first on this organic SEO and why are there a few ads, they are driving everything towards that. And if you don't have a strategy around it, you're impacting that first-time customer wanting to come in. There's a relevance factor that might be 4 months. If you're trying to figure out why, there are Google local guides. I'm one of the Google local guides. There's thousands and thousands out there. They have 10 levels. And if they are high on a level of that, they're going to be on the relevance. And usually most customers, 92%, not read the top 2-3 reviews to determine whether or not they're going to go to that restaurant. So just want to leave it at that. Really think about that, because that's word of mouth marketing right there in the Google.
You got 30 seconds, Lauren, before we go.
Yeah. So what I will say about incentivizing general managers, to the question that you asked on what to do with this customer satisfaction and retention, you have an opportunity when you bonus them to tell them how important customer satisfaction is by how much weight you put on that metric. So whatever your metrics are, again, however you measure it, it needs to be regularly passed down to your manager on a weekly and monthly and a quarterly basis. So when we did it, it was up to almost half of their bonus was on those customer service and loyalty metrics. For us, that was the secret to our double-digit comp growth 2 years in a row. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Look, I think we could carry on for another hour on this subject. I'm so glad we've been able to get together. I really want to thank each of you, Zack, George, David, and Lauren, for your time today to be able to talk about what I think is probably one of the most important things that restaurants really should be thinking about. It's so easy to be able to bring this into your restaurant. It's so, the technology is out there, it's available, it's working, and it is something that can have demonstrable effect to your business. Thank you for your questions, for those of you listening in. For those that haven't been able to get a question answered, I'll ask the panel perhaps to respond back to you separately through the social channels. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them below. Last question I've got for you guys is, which was your favorite question? Fabio, Katie's, Chris's, any particular one? They're getting a free book sent to them. All right, well, I'm going to decide then.
I like what you should be measuring that Lauren answered. I think that to incentivize the right behaviors.
Fantastic. Katie, KTY, reach out to me. I'll send you a free book. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll have to do this again, and I really appreciate it. Take care.